Oh, there we go. Hi, I'm Bill Fountain, and I'm running for the CMS School District Number One, which essentially is Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson, and a little bit north of the W.T. Harris area. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is A.M.E. Fisher, and I also am running for District 1, which includes Highland Creek and Mountain Island Lake, as well as North and Charlotte, as well as Bill has said, Huntersville, Cornelius, and Davidson. And we're running on accountability, transparency, and restored trust in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gregory D. Rankin, and I am with running for the candidate as a candidate for District 3, which runs from the northwest part of Charlotte, from Sunset, Hornets Nest, all the way over through University to the northeast part of Charlotte, over towards Robertson Church. So I'm running on quality education, equitable resources, and improved school experiences. Thank you for having me this evening.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Sneed. I'm a candidate for District 4 for School Board, which runs from kind of Center City, Cherry neighborhood, all the way east, like towards down Albemarle Road, and then takes a hook to Mint Hill. And I am running on student achievement, support for our teachers and staff, access to mental health, transparency and accountability, and collaboration.
Good evening. I'm Carol Sawyer. I currently serve on the CMS Board of Education representing
Okay, thank you. Years ago, I was a program manager of two successful $100 million programs and also a Pentagon defense planner. And in those roles, we built together a measurable objectives. And this means, for instance, as a program manager, I was required to make sure I developed a product meeting high specifications, had to be on time and within cost, and I had to make a profit and keep my customer happy. Otherwise, I was relieved of my job by my vice president. This is the type of things that we need to do within the CMS with in everybody. I mean, even the board members have to have some accountability, because I have not seen that in the past, because we know that they hired a good gentleman, but it was not a very good superintendent. That's Ernest Whiston. They didn't hold him responsible or manageable. Oh, is that my time? Thank you.
Good evening again. Wanted to make sure that in terms of the budget, we got to understand that the school board represents the values of the community, those who elect them, as well as the superintendent is supposed to implement the values of the educational values of the community. And so what that means is we need to have a budget that reflects that. We need to have a budget that is going to attack student outcomes and make sure we have programs that can enhance the student outcomes. We are at a state of emergency in CMS, and so in any corporation, when there's a state of emergency, we need to make sure that we are spending and sending resources to those things that are very most important to get us out of this state. And so working with other board members is very, very important, because it's not one board member that matters, but it's the consensus of the board. So we have to be able to work with other board members, and then also hold the superintendent accountable to make sure that the resources that are in the budget are going towards those things that are going to help us get out of this state of emergency. Thank you.
Next question. Do we have District 2 here? No, District 2. Okay, we're going to go ahead to District 3. Many of you all have mentioned accountability tonight, whether it's accountability for current board members or for the superintendent. What does accountability look like to you?
For me, accountability is a multitude of things. Depends on what area you're talking about. For example, of course, accountability in the budget falls on us because we review the budget before it goes out, and it's our job to hopefully educate the public on, you know, these are funds that we cannot move. These are line items that we just can't move, but they have an understanding that they're discretionary funds that could possibly be used in other places. When it comes to the hot topic, student outcomes, I think the goal would be to have to show accountability throughout the year and have benchmarks set and be intentional with who reports to the board, how they report, so we can see throughout the year where we are and what we need to change, and to come up with, working with the superintendent, to develop a plan throughout the year to see how can, by the end of the year, we can show the growth that's needed and have a plan together to find out, okay, these are the areas, these are the students we're targeting.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. This next, all right, moving on forward. This next question is for District 4. We know that the strategic plan is carefully crafted to look at goals and guardrails, looking at goals for students, how to overcome any challenges that are there. Most recently, the Board of Education has been doing progress monitoring reports at their board meetings on a variety of topics, including reading for third grade students. students behind. We need to capture those. So we need to have goals that will capture those students that, you know, have some deficits, that may have some deficits or some limitations because of learning loss.
Thank you. So I was part of the board that set the goals and guardrails for the superintendent. And these goals are running through 2024. And actually in the coming year, we'll start looking at what goals we might want to set for 2024 and beyond for the next 5 years or so. I think this has been a good start in establishing goals and establishing benchmarks that the board looks at 3 or 4 times a year for each of those goals, and also for the guardrails. And the guardrails are things like, you know, we want to improve third grade reading, but the guardrail says we will not treat students inequitably. Because we don't want to go back to what we had in the past, where in order to raise reading scores, when my child was young, they quit teaching science and social studies. So,
Do you mind reading that question again?
Yes. Essentially, the board has been doing progress monitoring reports as of meetings most recently. Some of those topics include third grade reading for Black and Hispanic students, increasing the percentage of high school students that have endorsements on their diplomas, Math 1 scores. Essentially, what would you do differently when it comes to the strategic plan? So when 2024 comes and you're planning for the next 4 or 5 years, what would you do differently?
Okay, well, first I'd like to say that we need goals that are what we call a SMART goal. It needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant. And then anytime you set a goal, you need to have a goal and you have to have clear objectives to reach that goal. That's the first thing. And when I think about our current goals and guardrails that we have in place, I'm always back to this. I am concerned that we are leaving out our students who have scored level 1s and level 2s on the EOGs. And when you think about the level 1s and 2s, these are kids who are not proficient. The current goals that the board has set, I can see us reaching, or the board reaching those goals, because most of those kids are 4 and 5s and they are already on the trajectory of being proficient. I think we have to really be careful and really be intentional to include goals that wrap itself around supporting those kids who are level 1s and level 2s.
Time. We have a District 2 candidate that just walked in. I'm going to go ahead and come back to him before we proceed with the last 2 districts. How do you plan to work with the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners, whether it comes down to looking at the budget and presenting requests, or even more so, repairing some strained relationships that we have seen over the last several years?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that question. First of all, my apologies for being late. I'm Monty Witherspoon, Reverend Dr. Monty Witherspoon, candidate for School Board District 2. The way I'll be fully intentional on restoring the relationships and collaborative relationships with the Board of County Commissioners. I've received endorsement of at least 6 of them, I believe. I won't call names at this point. And I work each and every day, specifically work with one of our chief funding partners. I think that relationship is almost important, and being fully accountable and transparent with the work of the school board that we're doing, with the business decisions, with the Board of County Commissioners. I've talked to one in particular who can't get certain information. It seems to be like a culture of secrecy in CMS. So I intend fully to eliminate that and have open, collaborative relationships with the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you.
This next question is for the District 5 candidates. How do you plan to work with community organizations, whether it is the Black Political Caucus, Mothers for Liberty, African American Faith Alliance, or any other community organizations that are advocating for the best interest of students?
I will plan to be a
part. They have adults' interests, and they are speaking from positions of fear, and they seek to divide us, but they're masking it as if they're working in the interest of children. You know, I'm gonna give them a chance. They light me up right now because they don't like me, you know, I'll give them another chance. But if they continue to show themselves for who they are, we'll move on.
This next question is for District 6. There are thousands of students here in CMS. We realize that many of the older ones are involved in different groups, whether it's a student government organization, Generation Nation, Mecklenburg County Youth Council. How do you plan, and even the student advisor on the CMS board, how do you plan to work with this generation of students to make sure that their voices are heard and any concerns that they have are being addressed?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening. My name is Michael Watson. I'm running for Board of Education in District 6. I am a firm believer that the youth need to have a voice. We need to provide the proper forums for them to voice their concerns, be active in the process. I think even as we approach the end of this election, we haven't really considered the next wave of voters. I think that's something we have an opportunity as board members, as a community to do, to engage in that process. So again, my priority is to just make sure we have the proper forums and allow them to communicate to us and give them feedback back.
Thank you. This next question is for each of the candidates. We'll go in order from my right to my left. When it comes to the achievement gap, particularly looking at Black and Hispanic students, whether we're looking at state test scores that have just come out, whether we're looking at situations that may be affecting their learning at home, what are 2 things you would like to do to see the achievement gap close? Yeah, we'll start with you, Mr. Fountain.
Thank you. Excellent question. The student gap, if you look at the schools that have high absentee rate and the low performing schools normally have a high absentee rate, and they have a higher population of Black and brown children. So it means there must be a lack of motivation that's in those children. And I think part of that reason is because number one is that the schools, CMS, is not disciplining the troublemakers, the ones that are regular troublemakers. And what does that mean? That means that you do not have a behavior standard, and without a behavior standard, then people are going to say, it's going to reinforce bad behavior, it's going to allow unruly classrooms, and it's going to tell the students who are orderly that they could either be afraid or the school doesn't care about you learning. So
Time.
Okay.
Thank you. In terms of the achievement gap, and 2 solutions that I would like to institute in terms of helping that out is first, building the relationship of the tripod of education. That's the parent, the student, as well as the teacher. It takes a community to educate a child properly. And if the relationship is strained between these 3 entities, then you're going to continue to have the achievement gap, because parents are not going to be able to reinforce what their children are learning at home. And they're not going to be able to work collaboratively to make sure that that student is doing what needs to be done in class and learning effectively their education. But then also, I'd like to talk about the core curriculum in the school, making sure that our teachers are proficiently trained to teach the subject matter that they have, and make sure that there's student engagement in that subject matter that's being taught. I believe these are 2, but they're not the only ones that can help close that achievement gap. Thank you.
I believe that we should maintain high standards and raise expectations, knowing that all of our children can learn. There seems to be this accepted bias that particularly African American students, because of the composition of their home, they come from single parent home, or the poverty levels that they're so traumatized that they can't learn. I think we should maintain high standards and raise expectations, knowing that every child can learn. And day one, I'll come in laser focused on student achievement. I think that is of the utmost importance. And also, there seems to be this pushback that we can't talk about data anymore. If we talk about data, for instance, if I talk about University Park, where 90% of the 3rd graders are not proficient in ELA,
that, you know, they want to just tell us that we can't talk about that no more. No, that's not true. It's not telling, yes it is. It's our kids that cannot.
Time.
Thank you. Yeah, you get it. I'm sorry, Courtney, could you repeat that question one more time, just to make sure I'm answering it correctly?
Yes. What would be 2 solutions or proposed solutions that you have to close the achievement gap?
I'm going to come from a perspective of actual educational terms and strategies. One, we have to make sure we identify a consistent curriculum that's going to be implemented with fidelity across the district. Because why are gaps being formed? Because it's being taught different ways in different schools and different standards. So we have to make sure as a board that we govern the superintendent and make sure that he understands that we want this curriculum, if this is what we're choosing to use, to be implemented with fidelity across the district. Number 2, we have to increase professional development, ensure that our teachers are comfortable and they are masters of their craft, and make sure we implement and utilize tools like Mastery Connect. That's why the districts bought these different programs. Use these programs so we can understand where we are throughout the year to hold individuals accountable. Because Mastery Connect is used so we can to allow teachers to know what standards are not being met when they give assessments throughout the year. We have to start being intentional with our talk.
Time.
So one of the major things I think that we have to have, one, we can't have a deficit view of children. We have to believe that they can succeed and have high standards. We often heard of the narrative, so we have to talk about that because that's an important view. There's often a narrative like we're talking about just poor black children, and that's not the case. We have some gaps even in 2-family homes that are not necessarily poor, like middle income children. So middle income families. So that's one. The second thing is that we have to make sure we are setting the appropriate goals and that we have the superintendent that is properly executing, and this is what equity is, that we are giving the resources, the attention to the areas that need it. That means that it won't look the same, the support won't look the same in every school. Yes, curriculum should be consistent, and there are inconsistencies in how things are taught.
So I think there are a couple of things that others have mentioned. One is maintaining high expectations, but the other thing is resources. Resources matter. Allenbrook Elementary just made tremendous growth in actual growth of their students and in their proficiency rates. Part of the reason they got that extraordinary growth was that they had extraordinary resources. So they had small group instruction. They had 5 adults in the room working in small groups with those kids. That matters, and that's funding. We need to continue to advocate for Leandro to be fully funded by our state legislature, and we need to have fully funded from our county commission, because resources matter. Resources are people in CMS, and we need teaching assistants. We need other support services for our students to be successful. Thank you.
Okay, so I would say the first thing is that we need to make sure we have a consistent, across the board, every single school implementing a robust, multi-tier system of support framework. That's the first thing. If you guys have heard me talk, I talk about that all the time, because that is the solution to closing the gaps. Second, we have to support our teachers. I have worked in the building. I know some of the struggles that our teachers have to deal with when it comes to addressing children with adverse childhood experiences. That is known as ACEs. And the reason it is because some of our kids do come from trauma. And we can't look back and point at kids. We have to have the resources in the buildings to support our students as well as our teachers. I've seen excellent teachers teach who have all the strategies necessary to teach literacy.
Time.
We have to reallocate our funding. We've all said that, but we have to target the schools and the communities that need it the most. We have to individualize our instruction to meet the needs of the children. We did this years ago. Teachers worked long hours, worked individually. They changed up the instruction with the North Carolina Standard Course of Study as the end goal. But what worked in one classroom might not work at another. You can't cookie cut our kids. So the first strategy is individualized instruction. The second is reallocate the funding to meet the needs of the particular schools. What works at West Meck will not work at Garinger, will not work at Audrey Kell, nor will it work at Myers Park. You've got to look at the individual schools.
So the last time I was on the board, we won the Broad Prize, which is the top prize in the United States, the best school district in terms of raising student achievement overall and closing achievement gaps, especially among students of color and students who are coming from low-income situations. So I know how to chart pathways to success. If you look at it, the position, it's a huge organization, and we can't do everything at once. But the place where I see that we can make the most impact is at the principal level. I'm working on a statewide project in another state where we are working with professional development for principals. It's a 3-year project. Already in the first year, we have seen that principals who've gone through the program are retaining 20% more of their teachers. That means they're good, they know what they're doing, they have their teachers' backs. The other is what we did years ago, which was freedom and flexibility with accountability. If we've got a good principal, let them run at their school and let's get out of their way.
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that similar to a lot of answers you already heard. I think one of the things that we have to realize is, you know, the learning gap is a result of inequities. Inequities exist for a lot of different reasons. It's not just financially, but when you have inequities, you have to start to manage schools and look at performance and growth at a micro level. So you need to have individualized metrics that you look at to see where those students need to be. The second thing is we need to allocate for localized support. You know, again, I'll go back to what I just said. There's a lot of different reasons that inequities exist, and it's not financial. It could be anything from nutrition, and we need to address those issues before we start to look at how test scores are coming out.
Thank you all for that portion. This next question is for all of the District 4 candidates. Right now, CMS is doing community engagement sessions and asking students, parents, teachers, and even the everyday neighbor what they're looking for in the next superintendent. What are you looking for in the next superintendent, particularly when it comes to longevity and other qualities?
So this is where I think that I can be of assistance to the board as an employment attorney that engages in processes of hiring higher level officials. One, the superintendent, you know, it needs to be a knowledgeable things. You know, CMS is I think the 17th largest district in the United States. So they have to be able to deal with diverse socioeconomic, race, all of those things, student population and families. They also, one of the most important things I think for the superintendent is that they not have a deficit view of children, that they have a proven record of successes in moving students forward. One of the other things is that we often forget about is that we need the community to buy in on, need the community to buy in on CMS. So they have to be a motivator, not only to the staff, but to the community as well. So they have to be able to make connections with the community as well as the staff to get everybody's buy-in.
Thank you. And I would encourage everyone here to participate in the superintendent surveys and meetings, because we do want to hear from the community. I want a superintendent who embraces the core values of CMS and the values of our community, especially those that are expressed in our multiculturalism policy, a policy that spells out that we are a community that values racial, ethnic, sexual orientation, and diversity
in gender identity, that we are an open and affirming community that welcomes all. So that is really important to me. I also want a leader who will bring strong people to his or her team and allow decisions to be made at the lowest possible level of the organization. So decisions that can be made at the classroom are made at the classroom, and those that need to be made higher up are made higher up. Thank you.
I think it's very important for us to engage the community, and I definitely encourage everyone to participate in the survey that the board has. And second, it's important to me for the superintendent to be a point leader. And a point leader is a person who understands how to surround himself with gifted, qualified, skilled people to work on his team. It has to be a person who understands the diverse culture that we have in the city of Charlotte, as well as one who understands the demographics and that we have a large district and know how to work in that district. But the last thing I want to say quickly, we need to make sure we hire someone who's coming to this district with intention of staying. We have had so many superintendents come and go, other than just being fired. We need longevity. That needs to be a question at the forefront.
Thank you all. This next question is for the District 5 candidates. Last school year, and granted, yes, this could have happened in any school district across the country, but we saw that 30 guns were found on campus. From there, a safety task force was developed with input from students, parents, teachers, other school members. The district doubled the number of random safety screenings, launched an anonymous reporting system, bought, purchased, and installed evolved body scanners. I think that's all of what happened. It was a lot of things that happened to ensure the safety for the students. What do you think could be done differently? You know, with those scanners this year, we've only seen one gun found, which means they are working, they're in place. What do you think could be done differently to ensure the safety of staff, students, and everybody else entering the building?
Well, let me just say that we need to have resource officers at every level, not just high schools, not just middle schools, but on elementary. We also need to have more campus security associates. Having talked with CMS Police Department, they need more funding to hire more security people so that we can let the teachers do what they do, which is teach, and the children learn by feeling safe. So funding needs to be redirected to support that and work with the communities of Mint Hill, Pineville, Huntersville to see if we can get their police involved, just like they have in Matthews. Matthews Elementary has an SRO. I don't see them at other elementary schools.
Thank you.
So, you know, I support a lot of what Lisa just said. I think that, you know, we understand that, you know, there's limited resources, but a lot of times what happens in our neighborhoods shows up in our schools, and then the vice versa. What happens in our schools shows up in the neighborhood. So, yes, I agree on those safety measures. But, you know, I think we've also got to address some preventive measures. I think that we don't have a culture, and we don't have a culture because we have not had strong, consistent, clear leadership. If you think about your church, your neighborhood, whatever organizations you're in, the ones that really work have strong leadership. And that means at the superintendent level, the board level, at the principal level. You know, I support a lot of the things that the schools have started to do with, you know, sort of meditation rooms and calming rooms. Look, we've all gone through a national, international trauma for the last 2.5 years. We've got to be honest about addressing it.
Could you remind me of your first and last name, sir? I wanted to piggyback off of your question. What was your name again?
Trent Merchant.
Trent Merchant. District 6, piggybacking off of Mr. Merchant's question, at the tail end, he started talking about mental health resources. We know with this, you can't just get the money from anywhere. It has to come from somewhere. And we know with the federal COVID funding, there are certain allotments. With that, I know that I've spoken to current board members about advocating with the General Assembly to get more money for mental health funding. It's something that students say they want to see more of, parents say they want to see more of. They say they feel that will be more preventative. how do you plan to work with county and state leaders to get more mental health resources in the schools for students? And even staff who may need it too.
Sure. So before we talk about that, I think we have actually a surplus from COVID relief funds that could be allocated to use for mental health resources. But in addition, I'm a strong believer that we have to advocate and reach out to our community partners for funding. I think we have to look, the community is, and our business partners are just as much a stakeholder in our schools and in the mental health of our students. So I think that's a great place to start. But again, we have to ask where we can ask. I don't think we're going to advocate our way to the Leandro financial windfall, but we have to work where we can with what we have, and I think those are two places we can start. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is for the District 1 candidates. And I'm not timing this part, I just have an informational question. Are you aware of the highest point of your district and the lowest point as far as like geography? I'm just trying to pinpoint. Yes. What are they? I'm just for my question purposes.
Yeah, Mountain Island Lake and Highland Creek. Right, yeah, Highland Creek.
Okay. All right, so my question for you all, I'm sure Davidson and Highland Creek are nowhere near each other. You're gonna have to get in the car and travel a very long way, whether it's north, south, east, west, across your district. You have a lot of schools and thousands of students in there. How do you plan to make sure that you're visible to your constituents from any point of your district, if that makes sense?
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, one of the areas of is even the going to PTAs and visiting the and visiting the schools, visiting the principals, talking to them, and particularly if you get into the PTA type of you're also being able to have a dialogue with the teachers and parents, being able to get an understanding of how they are seeing things, and they're going to be different from from all the way up at the Davidson and all the way down to, like we were saying about Highland Creek. But all the school districts all through there, we have some poor schools and we have some schools that are flourishing. So all of that has to be looked at, and I think that's one of the key things. And also meeting with the town commissioners for each of the different towns, if we can also get looped in with them, because they know what's going on from their perspective, from their feedback, and that's going to be, I think, will be able to help us and the school board to do that.
Thank you for the question. You're right, we have a very large school district, and I think with my experience, it won't be so hard to be visible. When I moved here 17 years ago, I moved here as a senior director of student development at a very large ministry, over 3,500 students, and I had to be visible with those families. And so what you have to do is you have to take time to go and visit. You have to take time to understand what's going on in the schools and the things that are happening, because you're developing policies and conditions that are affecting their lives. But I think what we're doing now is through our website, is we're developing a website that's going to keep us visible, developing a website that's going to be able to talk and speak with students, parents, community leaders. So there's going to be a touch point, because what we want to do is we want to build an advocacy group that's going to be able to not just get us to the election and get us to the seat, but be able to hold us.
Time.
Thank you.
I have an informational question for Carol, just because I'm not sure how this works. This isn't timed. When it comes down to, at-large seats are completely different from the numbered seats. Now, as far as chair and vice chair, those are not something that are up for election right now? Or is it possible one of you all, if you win?
Every year, we elect a chair, vice chair at the first meeting when the new board is sworn in. So the December, I want to say 14th-ish.
Got you.
There's only one meeting in December, and at that meeting, the new board will be sworn in, and we will elect a chair and vice chair.
And that could be anybody that's there?
Anybody.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
District 2, if you have the opportunity to become elected to this board, would you pursue a chair or vice chair position? If you were to do that and you become appointed to that, how would you use that additional position to help you when it comes to helping and supporting your constituents?
Well, my first priority would be to fully serve my district without any political ambitions otherwise. If, in fact, that opportunity did present itself, I think that I could be effective in ensuring that the various committees have the appropriate leadership and putting persons on the committees where they can be most effective with their leadership skill set. And so I think that that's one way. And I think to continue to help drive what I believe is most important is to be laser focused on student achievement. And I think those two things, but first and foremost, I would be my priority is to serve my district and the community at large as well.
Thank you. District 3, you know, it's not only just your position as a board member, but there's also policies within there, policy committee, that's what I was talking about. Different committees within your position. If you are elected, how would you serve on different committees when it comes to making decisions for the whole of the board?
If elected, I know that I don't know if I would have any say on what committees I'd be on, but I know if I had some influence, one of the most important committees I would love to be a part of would be the policy committee. The policy committee, because policy changes things. I understand the importance of policy, and I have a master's in public administration, so I understand the importance of policy and how policy is delegated and how policy is created. Throughout my years as an education advocate, I've attended several policy committees. I've actually had the opportunity to assist through my work through the Black Political Caucus and on the Equity Committee to help change policy for student discipline. So I think through my experience, my education, and just my passion, the policy committee will be one of the committees I would love to serve on. Next, I think facilities is important also. That's another one that's very important because you have to create an environment that's conducive to learning.
Time. Thank you all. We're going to go ahead and take some questions from the audience. Just want to make sure, are those being written down, or if not, I can ask them on their behalf, if y'all have any. Yeah.
How do you all deal with the policies of gender,
We're going to bring the microphone so you can ask that again. Was that question for anybody, or was it for a particular, anybody? Okay. We'll take the first 3 people for that one.
how do you all deal with the gender, pro-gender and other gender?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Excellent question. I think part of the problem that we have within our schools is the push toward the gender identification and the panorama surveys, which I think is confusing our children's sexuality. You know, we were born male and female, and that is a rock that for a stability for us. And when we start manipulating that or trying to confuse children, because children, we all know, are vacillating a little bit. And so if you pick them up when they're vacillating to the right or when they're vacillating to the left, I think that's gonna disturb their balance. And I think we need to be very careful. In fact, if I was elected to that, I would push to get rid of the gender identification program and that panorama survey, because I think it's a destabilizing thing for our children, and we need to have that stopped, I think. Thank you.
Ms. Sawyer, I saw your hand first.
Yeah. First of all, the panorama survey does not ask gender identity questions. Second of all, we have strong policies to support all of our students, to prevent bullying, to allow students to live their authentic selves, and for students and staff. And I think that's important to have healthy children in our schools. One of the things I'm most proud of in serving on the board is that I worked on our policy
and practice, such that for the first time ever, CMS staff were represented in the Charlotte Pride Parade. I think that that was an important first step in celebrating the diversity of our staff, and our students were moved by that as well, that they were seen and accepted. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to add to that. I agree wholeheartedly with what Carol just said. We do have policies in place to protect our kids from harassment and bullying, and those policies need to be in place for just that. But when I want to speak to the panorama data, as a licensed school counselor, that data was very valuable to us because it showed us where we needed to focus our work. There is nothing in that panorama data that is gender specific or any other concern that I heard. That data is really important for school counselors to do the work, to serve students, to understand where their needs are. So I definitely advocate for the panorama.
Dee, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah,
and
just
then we'll go to-
briefly, I just want to reiterate some things that I would support. Every kid deserves to receive a quality education, regardless of how you identify or what that your sexual identification, your race, your gender, whatever that may be. As a board member, it was my job to protect those students and ensure that they receive a quality education. Second, listen to what individuals are saying. They're speaking and using terms that they don't know what they're talking about. Panorama is a survey that actually can help us to understand where kids are socially and emotionally. It has nothing to do with gender. But what happens is there's these dog whistles. They're trying to throw stuff out there, and they don't know what they're talking about. So be aware of individuals who come in here and say things that can divide us. So make sure we understand that, because Panorama is a useful tool so we can understand where our kids are socially and emotionally and where they are mentally. Because every kid needs that. It needs to be protected.
Thank you. For this next question, it'll probably be easier. I'll just pick people to answer rather than trying to talk over each other. It got a little chaotic. So for the next audience question.
Good evening. My name is Janie Campbell, and these are my children, Edison and Nora Rose, and they are students at Bruns Elementary. And my question is, I don't know if anyone is here from District 2. Is there anybody here?
I'm a candidate for District 2.
Can you raise your hand, because I can't.
Monty Witherspoon,
Okay,
I'm a
yes.
candidate.
Okay,
I'm a
thank you.
candidate, yes.
Candidate, okay. My question to you is, how do you plan on bridging the gap between Irwin Elementary and, Irwin Academic Center and Bruns Elementary? My children have had the opportunity, and excuse me for being out of breath, got some health issues going on. My children have had the opportunity to attend both, and it's night and day, first world and third world. It is very different. And when I walk in, when we first came back to Bruns, the teacher said, "Oh my God, you left Irwin to come back to Bruns?" Yes, we did. And we expect the same education that they got at Irwin. We expect the same thing at Bruns. They're getting ready to build a new school. We won't benefit from it. We'll probably be long gone. And because of gentrification, we will have moved on. So my question is basically, how will you bridge the gap? West Charlotte, Myers Park, my oldest son, who is a sophomore at East Carolina in the nursing program, attended Myers Park. West Charlotte, Myers Park, same thing. I've had the opportunity to experience both. I have little cousins at West Charlotte, and it's night and day. You walk in, you got to fend for yourself at West Charlotte. Very nice school, but it's not where they want to be, but they're obligated to be there. How are you going to bridge that gap? I have one more question, and I know my time. I know she, has the time. The bullying that goes on at Bruns. We have a magnificent principal, Dr. Curry. He's excellent. I have no complaints about him. But what I'm seeing is, because it's a majority minority school, they're not suspending the bullies. They're not suspending the fight that my son was telling me about that the girls was on the playground, drag out fighting mommy. They fought till somebody came. Oh, mommy, I thought they were going to kill each other. Son, did they come back the next day? Oh, yeah, they were back the next day, sure, yeah. The little boy that was bullying him, back to school the next day. What are you all going to do about it as far as the policies? Because it's a minority school, I feel as though you all are, because it's a black school, let's not make the statistics high and make it look like we're suspending our black children, whereas at these other schools, we're just letting it slide. Myers Park, fact information I'm getting ready to, and then I'm going to stop. They have a drug epidemic that's going on that's not being put on the news. West Charlotte, all of their stuff has been put on the news, but Myers Park is not as good as they portray. My son saw drugs every single day, but because I'm the great parent that I am, I teach my children about drugs, peer pressure. I teach them about all of that. What are you all going to do about that? Thank y'all so much for letting me go over my time.
You're good. So since those were two very thorough questions, I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to address both topics.
Well, first, let me say thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being the mother that you are and engaged in the matriculation of your students. I think that's so very important. Thank you for that. You said a lot that was more information to me. And it's important to hear these stories. One of the things you pointed out that I think was critically important is the principal is there. And I'm glad to hear you say, which I had nothing to do with because I'm a candidate, but I'm glad to hear you say that it's a wonderful principal. And I think that's so important that we have highly effective, well-trained principals at each school in hopes that also you will attract highly trained teachers as well. What I'm also hearing, again, it's more important for me to hear this, is about the violence in schools. I've heard about it at West Charlotte, 20-something fights over there. They don't have enough staff in order to intervene over there. So you're pointing out some critical and chronic issues that are in high poverty schools that need to be addressed. Sure, we need the funding, but we also need the willpower to make it happen for our students. I think that every student, one of my platform points is to have a safe learning environment across the board. You can't learn and thrive in an environment where there's toxicity and bullying, and these are issues that I plan to address. And part of it is going beyond just these visible representations of safety and getting to some evidence-based measures that create genuinely safe schools. And when I say that, I'm talking about we have to intervene before things even blow up in the schools to the point where, and intervene in the lives of students and give students the ability to handle conflict.
Time.
Well, that was 2 minutes. Good gracious.
Can I
Yeah. So,
add
yeah, go ahead.
to that?
I'll give you one. Well,
Okay,
you know
okay.
what? 2. Yeah, let's do 2 first.
Again, thank you
We'll
so
go,
much
y'all.
for being the mother that you are and keeping hope, even though you're in the midst of what you're in. One thing that I did is I live in Huntersville, but I pastored in West Charlotte with Reed Park. And I saw a vast difference between the two in the same district. That's a part of why I'm running. Even though I'm representing my community in Huntersville, as a board member, I will affect decisions for the entire community. And we cannot have that discrepancy between schools in different communities. And so we have to make sure that we have equitable policies that are going to reach all of the community. But then we also need to make sure that the policies are executionable, that we're not just having policies on paper that look good, but they're executed, and we're holding our superintendent and all of his staff accountable for executing it. It doesn't matter the color. Violence is violence. Violence doesn't come in a color. But violence is violence, and if someone is violating a policy, we need to make sure that they are being disciplined in the way that they need to be disciplined, but helped so they're not repeat offenders. There's something that we have to make sure that we're not perpetuating the repeating of that offense, but we're handling what needs to be handled, that they can become educated, they can take advantage of the education as well. And so as what I've done is counseling repeat juvenile offenders, you got to understand the mentality of that. But you have to have representation on the board that understands the mentality of that. And so we need to make sure that equity committee is just not a committee, but it's a committee that is providing information to our board that we can hold the staff of CMS accountable to make sure that these things are happening. We cannot allow to have a board that is not representing the educational values of our community. And you've expressed your educational values, and it's up to us to make sure that those educational values are being represented. Thank you.
Dee, and then Stephanie, and then yes, Ms. Witherspoon. Well, yeah, I'll let you be the last one for this one.
Thank you for your question. Even though I am in District 3, I represent the entire county. So your children are my children. So I just want to say first, I'm going to be precise. As a board member, we control policy, and we have influence on some of the goals that the superintendent can focus on. So part of the problem that we have some of our discipline gaps is because there's a focus on the zero tolerance policy. That's where the gaps come from. But there's also a bullying policy that we forget about. And we need to focus on these kids that are being bullied and put more emphasis on the bullying policy so those individuals can be protected as well, and not focus on when a kid gets in a fight, everybody gets suspended, not knowing that kid's been bullied for 3 months. We should catch that early, and that should be the emphasis early. Second, about the Irwin and Bruns, we have to deploy resources. We've heard that word many times, but resources doesn't always mean money. It's social capital, human capital, all those different things together, along with financial capital together. And what can I do as a board member to empower because I had some students, my daughters went to Irwin. There was phenomenal parent involvement. So what can I do to empower those parents at Bruns as a board member so they can have the ability to whatever parent involvement and engagement looks like to them, because it's going to be different at every school just because of just the nature of how everybody makes their living. But what can I do as a board member to empower you to be involved and engage? How can I help that situation? And lastly, what kind of resources can I apply to the school to ensure that they receive that the teachers and principals at that school, especially the educators, are distinguished and accomplished teachers? What kind of professional development can I deploy there so they can be distinguished and accomplished? Thank you.
Thank you.
So one of the things I think that that I'm hearing is that we have to make sure that we are approaching this as board members, and kind of that has influence on the superintendent, that we make sure that we are creating community connections. And these have to be a genuine connection. Like, parents have to be taken seriously. As a parent, I myself have been dismissed in the school system. So we have to make sure we're creating avenues for there to be community engagement. That has to be a one of the top priorities of the superintendent, that is brought up from the top down, that we are actually committed and have general connections to parents, grassroots organizations, community stakeholders. The other thing is there are some opportunities here for collaboration that I think that should be explored. For example, fights in schools, we always, we hear a lot of times that these are community issues. Well, we need to be partnering with the community. And what does that mean? What does that kind of look like? So the city of Charlotte, so this is an intergovernmental thing, right? The city of Charlotte has violence disruptors. Those are the people who have their ear to the ground in terms of what are the strife that can happen in a community. They try to disrupt that violence that sometimes can end up in our schools. There has to be a partnership between the city and those violence disruptors. There needs to be a connection with that in CMS, so that the school system can make sure that we are aware of these issues to stop them at school as well.
What I want to add, how I want to respond to your question. First, as I listened to your question and your concern, the first thing that came to mind for me was equity and quality. Because when I heard you talk about from one school to the next, the difference that you saw, that points to not having the same quality education from one school to the next. That is something that the board has to address. But when I think about bullying, I have worked in CMS, and I have gone through training when I was doing my principal license, and I know that we have a clear set policy against bullying. But a policy is only as good as it is implemented. So it has to start with our board to ensure that that policy is being implemented. And when each and every principal, and your principal, I heard you say that the principal is an excellent principal, but he has been trained, or he should have been trained, to know what to do when a child brings a concern of bullying. That starts with an investigation in your school, and it goes from that point. We have clear, CMS has clear policies to address that, but it goes back to accountability. As I said earlier, policy is only as good as it is implemented. So that is the biggest issue. We have to make sure there's consistency across our district, from one school to the next.
Thank you. Do we have any more audience questions? For this next question, I want to make sure that some of our candidates who haven't had a chance to answer this audience round get a chance. I know that's everybody from 5, 6, I think so. Oh, okay. Yep. We'll go with y'all, and then we'll go back to popcorn style.
Good evening. My name is Deirdre Reed. I am a member of Ramsey's Court number 78, who helped to co-sponsor this event, along with Ramsey's Temple number 51. We are an institution, community-based organization in the community. Through our building on Beatties Ford Road, we see and serve some of the most vulnerable students in Mecklenburg County. We believe that it takes a village to raise a child. We are that village. If elected, how would you work with us and other community-based organizations like ours to support the whole child in their academic success?
And we're going to do 1 minute for this one, since it was just one question.
I'll go ahead and answer that. We did that many years ago. We involved the community by getting the community into the schools and having that partnership, because we needed their help. Also, we had parents who may not have had understood the educational process. Many of our new parents that come from out of the country, we went through educational processes so that they are part of it. It is a partnership. We have to work together, because right now we are not working together. You need to feel welcome. We have to work with each other. So I've done that before. I've gone into the churches. I've gone into the communities. And I'll do it again to make sure our children are successful. We have been successful years ago doing it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for hosting this tonight. I really appreciate it. So when I was on the board previously, we, I think, did a pretty good job. I mean, we had a full menu of various groups who were working with our schools and with our students. And one of the ways that it worked well was everybody kind of knew their lane. So you knew, this group is going to be working at this school with this particular subset of students. I have seen, as a community member, inconsistency from CMS in its community partnerships outreach in recent years. But I think sometimes also we don't take the time to get to know each other well enough and to know what everybody's particular passions and strengths are. I think if we take that upfront time to figure that out, we'll be more successful working together.
Yeah, so I'm a strong advocate that the community is crucial and really critical to the growth of a student and the growth of our schools. With that being said, I live in a district where I have a unique perspective on this. I am not aware of any organizations in my area that cater to students of color, lower performing students, and I'm in District 6. So part of that is I don't know that we all do a great job of communicating the art of what's possible. the ability to partner with organizations. So I think we need to do some dialogue back and forth about how we can help each other, and I think we can all socialize what's available a little better. Thank you.
Last person for this question is Stephanie Sneed.
So as a member of a grassroots organization, I worked for many years with the Westside Education Think Tank. So that's like, one, it's benefit to have board members that kind of have that perspective. And our goal was, one, to create parent advocates, to make sure that parents know how to advocate for their children, what they should be asking for, how they can support. One of the key things I think that what happens with grassroots organizations, because I run across this all the time, is that there tends to be, we need to make sure we're removing some of the barriers for people to participate. Like, it has to be easier for these partnerships to happen. And right now it's cumbersome. And so, organizations can get discouraged because they don't feel necessarily they have a seat at the table. But we need to make sure that we are making avenues for these grassroots organizations. So we just need to just move that needle a little bit to make sure that we have that invitation and it's open to grassroots organizations.
Thank you. I think we have one more audience question back there as well.
Good evening. My name is Tony Weathers, and I'm a citizen and was raised here in Charlotte, graduated West Charlotte High School. I'd like to know, how many of y'all are from Charlotte? Just wanted to ask. Okay. All right. The reason why I asked that is because, and I wanted to know this here, just a couple of things. Are we looking inward within CMS for a superintendent? Because I know for a lot of the years in the past, superintendents, they have been from out of state, not from CMS. I think that a lot of our problems arise with people coming in trying to change the dynamics of our school system. I think it takes someone from inside to really get a change, a real change, somebody within the community for our school system. And I'd also like to know, will you all, as members of the school board, be more visible in the schools and in the communities, so that people can reach out to y'all, not just at board meetings and election times?
For all of y'all that raised your hand for his initial question about, y'all go ahead. Carol, I saw your hand first.
So the next board will be hiring a superintendent, and we will be looking for someone with proven experience, and I haven't ruled out anyone at this point, although I think with the board's very strong goals and guardrails, that will help us select someone who can be successful. I wasn't born in Charlotte, got here as fast as I could, lived here longer than I've lived any other place. And the other part of the question, there was a second part.
Grow your own.
In terms of visibility, yes. I spend a lot of my time in community meetings all over East Charlotte, whether it's with Charlotte East or a group called Econ or FENCO, or I spent Sunday with the Holy Trinity Ethiopian Orthodox Church talking about magnet schools. So I'm out in the community all the time.
So on the first part, I keep saying the last time I was on the board, but I was on the board. I think that's important. You should know that. And that was the last time CMS was really successful, right? From that era, we had 21 members of the leadership team who went on to become public school superintendents. So we had an outstanding leadership bench. I'll be real honest, I don't see it there right now. So I think we're gonna have to rebuild it, but then, to your point, I think that's the way to go, is to grow your own. I don't know that we can do it this time. I would trumpet that I'm an executive search consultant. That means that organizations hire me as a consultant to find senior leaders, and my clients include public school districts. So I'm excited about taking that on as a board member. In terms of visibility, I live in South Charlotte. My office is right next to the sanitation department on Ott Street. I like being in different parts of the city, so yes, you'll see me.
Thank you. Dee.
I'm a native Charlottean, and I've seen the district change, and I've just seen how where Charlotte has changed. I will say that if we look at the data, first let me say if elected to the board, the process, whatever the process is put in place, I want to follow that process with fidelity and select the best candidate possible, whether it's within the district or outside of the district. But we just had a superintendent that was a teacher and worked his way through the ranks, became chief of staff, ombudsman, and superintendent, black male. I'm not saying the decision was right or wrong, but the data that was reported this year of the growth, guess who that was under, right? So he knew something, he was doing something. But I know now, hindsight is 20/20, but that growth that we see, that through a pandemic, black male, understood it, leadership, he did something right.
Time. Yeah, Mr. Brown, I'll let you go ahead.
Yes, I had an opportunity. I saw an opportunity to offer a name. I don't know. I can't remember what newspaper it was, but they sent me an email about who would you think about from a local person. So I put down Reverend Dennis Williams, and I thought he's a wonderful guy because I've been at the CMS school boards speaking at the same time, and he was speaking. And we would talk later and have a lot of the same type of things that we were thinking. So again, I haven't coordinated this with him, so I'm just throwing out a name which is someone I highly respect. Thank you.
So I want to respond as well. I grew up in Charlotte, attended elementary school here, and graduated from West Mecklenburg High School. So, yeah. And I think it's important for us to take our time to hire the right superintendent. And I say the right. And I heard you talk about homegrown. Yeah, that can happen. But I have not personally, I don't see anything across our board that I would be in agreement with if I was on the board to hire. I think what we have to do is take our time, make sure we got a squeaky job description that outlines everything that we need and a superintendent. And to make sure that we get the right superintendent. That's what I think is the best thing for closing our gaps. That is going to be the best thing for our district, is to do it with fidelity, take our time, and make sure we get the right person this go round.
Well, you've said a lot of what I was going to say, but within CMS, if we had someone in Charlotte, I think the board would have already looked at them. We have gone, in the 30 years I was with CMS, we went through a lot of Lulus and some good superintendents. And right now there's no one there that can bring this district together. Let's call it like it is. We have to have someone who's not going to have his 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door when they're walking in to make a name for themselves. We have to have someone who's going to be dedicated to the children and the community, and that's going to be hard. Take our time, evaluate it, and let's not do what we've been doing for the past 15 years of selecting superintendents. We've got to change. It hasn't worked. So we have to do something totally different and take our time.
I just want to say, first of all, that it's only fair that I have this opportunity to say I went to Olympic High School, since everybody else said all they had to say, 1998 graduate. But just one quick point is that it's so important. This is why this election is so important, because you have to have people on the board who can attract and create a culture where a superintendent wants not just to come, but to stay. And that's why it's so important that we elect the right people to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. This last question is from me. And we're going to do 30 seconds for each person, and we're going to start from District 6 all the way down in order of where you are seated. There are going to be stories that come out, and we may need to hear from board members on them. They may be good, bad, or ugly, or it may be a story that somebody's not thinking of. Myself have done many stories on progress monitoring reports. We sit in the meetings, we hear it, but we want to bring a face to it. We want to hear from the board, we want to hear from students. How do you intend, if elected, how do you intend to work with the news media to be visible when it comes to stories in the district, regardless of whether they are good, bad, or ugly? 30 seconds, starting with District 6.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So number one, I believe in transparency and accountability. But number two, when we learned this at a policy meeting, that a lot of what the board does, we're bound by legal obligation not to speak about. I think when you get into those realms where we can't speak about it, we just have to relay that appropriately and effectively. But otherwise, I think it's fair to be transparent and allow forums where people can ask you those questions and you can address them clearly. And apologies, I have a family emergency I need to attend to, so I'm going to leave early. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Thank you.
So we're all going to say transparency. We better. It's the correct answer, right? I will also say this. If you don't tell your own story, somebody else is going to tell it worse with less information. So we've got to have the courage to stand up there and take the hits sometimes. But I've never, look, when I was on the board last time, I had peers who got mad at me because I was always talking to reporters. I think that was my job, was to communicate with people. So I'm going to do that again.
Thank you.
For what we're legally bound not to talk about, I will follow that rule. But we're representing the people. So the best way to get the good, the bad, the ugly out to the community is through the news media. So you will be our best friends helping us get that information out as long as we're allowed to get the information.
Thank you.
And I guess I'm going to follow suit because the first thing I thought was transparency. That's going to be huge, to be transparent. But you have to also respect and follow the rules that are set or that have been set for the board. And third, we're not going to get it all right. We're human. And I think when you're wrong, you're wrong. You have to own it. If you're right, you're right. We are all human, so we're not perfect. But I'm sure the board will do its best to do what is best for children and to be transparent.
Time. Thank you.
Yes, I think I have been responsive to the media in my service on the board. And I also think we need to know that the board has a code of conduct because the board acts, excuse me, as a whole. We do not function as individuals in this capacity. And I think it's important for the board to use its collective voice with the media because we want to be an effective board. And if we have board members that go to the media to stir up stuff, it doesn't help our board be effective.
So obviously everybody thinks we should be accountable. We serve the public, and that's why we're elected, so we need to be able to reveal as much information as possible. But the key thing is, and take ownership of the good, as Ms. Witherspoon said, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that when we are addressing the community that we're offering solutions as well. Like, so when something is amiss, then we're able to say, this is how we're going to correct it. Like, that is key.
Time. Thank you.
For me, if I'm legally able to speak on it, I'm an open book. I will be transparent, and you will know my perspective. And that's pretty much it.
Courtney, you're going to have a direct line straight to me, and we can talk anytime. And but seriously, it's so important that we effectively communicate too. And I think there's a communication gap between CMS and the community, and we have got to bolster and even over communicate and tell exactly where we are where we need to be, why we aren't where we are in the community. And I think that this is the medium in order to do that.
Thank you.
I totally agree with my other individuals who are on this dais. You cannot build trust if there's no communication. And so it's very important that you do have that communication. And yes, there are some things that we're legally bound on, but that's the importance of voting for a board that you can see could collaboratively work together, so we could have a collaborative voice to inform you. But I would also say it's very important that you come to those board meetings so you don't have to hear the narrative from somebody else, but you hear it for yourself. And that's why it's important that we come to you, but you also come to the board, and we are there with you so we can do it together.
I agree exactly what he was saying about having trust, but you got to be open, because these are people who have their taxpayers, their parents, and they need to know what's going on. And that transparency, I think, is a very, very important thing. In fact, my daughter used to be on Fox News. She used to be a reporter on Fox News, and so I understand what that is, and that's an excellent way that we can get the word out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your time this evening, for sharing your evening, your perspectives with all of us on a variety of topics. I truly appreciate it. This was a great time to reconnect with some of you that I may not have seen in a while, connect with some of you that I may not have met before, and even Carol already having worked with you over the last year and a half. Now we're going to hear from Mr. Hicks. He's going to close out tonight's program.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm just here to say thank you. Thank you to everyone for coming out, participating in this forum tonight. Specifically, our moderator, Courtney, thank you for your time. Our candidates, School Board Candidate Forum Partnership, Ramesses Court number 78, NAACP Charlotte-Mecklenburg Branch number 5376, Ramesses Temple number 51, Old State, Little Rock A.M.E Zion Church, and the NCNW Charlotte section. Again, we appreciate you all coming out tonight. I think it was very informative for all of us. God bless and good night.